Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome. Inshallah, this is my first of the seminar series, which I will be doing on Islamic worldview, Faith Essentials, and Islamic theology. And I'm aiming to finish this within a year. I'm going to do like a whole course sort of a thing. And this course usually part of our ISRA courses as well. It's one of the subjects. It'll be like a taster for the subject as well, inshallah. So I'll commence straight away. There are people online as well. So we are going to do, as I said, a series of seminars where we will start with belief and disbelief considerations in Islam. So what is Iman? What is belief? What is disbelief? And then we will go on to all the 6 essential articles of faith and their details as well. So we'll start with what is worldview, because worldview is important. If we look at the dictionary meaning of worldview, a particular philosophy of life or conception of the world. That's what worldview is in general. Worldview is the way humans interpret the universe and the world, significance of being and human life, a key problem in human condition and how to address it. While our beliefs and values in general and behaviors are determined by our worldview, they are also shaped and influenced by our worldview as well. This is an interesting concept because some disbelievers argue that because you believe in certain thing, that is affecting your worldview, they say, but it goes the other way around as well. So your worldview affects your beliefs as well. So it's both-sided. So some of the worldview questions that we can address: what is existence and why do things exist? So this is more deep philosophical understanding, but it's part of worldview. So we're saying, what is existence? Do we really know what existence is in detail? Why do things exist? Because we know that the universe is contingent. You know, it could have existed or it could not have existed. So why was the preference made over non-existence to exist? This is from a philosophical perspective. And how could we know what we know? Where does knowledge come from? What is the meaning and purpose of life? Biggest question, isn't it? What is the meaning and purpose of life? Where do we come from as human beings? And what happens after death? Does God exist? This is in general questioning. And what is God's nature? How did God create and continues to create? Because creation is continuous. Are natural events governed by God? You know, there are people who say that the God created the universe and just left it. He put certain laws and system there and it's functioning by itself. This is not the Islamic view, of course, because God has rububiyyah, he is Rabb, means he is the governor, he is in charge and control of everything at any instant, from the micro to the macro worlds. Does God communicate with people and how? Why does God allow evil and suffering? Are there other conscious beings other than human beings? So all these questions, one by one, we will eventually address throughout our series of seminars, inshallah, if God willing. So we'll begin with the 3 dimensions of Deen. When we say Deen, we're referring to religion, yeah? And religion, Deen, in Islamic terminology, it's a noun, and it encompasses 3 major things underneath it, which we'll mention eventually. But I want to start with a very famous hadith. It is narrated by Omar radiallahu anh, and it's called the Jibril hadith. Many people would know this. And according to this Jibril hadith, one day Jibril alayhi salam walked into the gathering where the Prophet ﷺ was there as well, in a human form. And when he walked in, all the Sahaba, the companions who were present, they saw this man come in. He had a very dark hair, extremely white clothes, garment on him, He was very brilliant, like shining, very clean white clothes. And he was a man whom they have never seen in Medina before, a human being. And then he sat right next to the Prophet, knee to knee, and he grabbed the Prophet ﷺ by the thighs. And then he asked Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, "O Muhammad, tell me about Islam." This is that man is asking. And then our noble Prophet replied, "Islam is to testify that there is no deity but God. There is no deity but Allah. And Muhammad is the messenger of God. It is to offer the prayers, to pay the compulsory charity, which is zakat, fast during Ramadan, and make the pilgrimage to the house of Kaaba, if you are able to do so." So when he asked Jibril about Islam, the Prophet gave him the answer of the 5 pillars, as you all know. So this goes under the Deen, see, Islam. And then this man again said to the noble Prophet, "You have spoken rightly." It's very interesting. And the Sahaba says, we were amazed at him saying that he had spoken rightly. So he's correcting the Prophet, or he's saying, yes, that's correct. They were shocked. He then said, "Tell me about Iman, faith." And the noble Prophet ﷺ said, "It is to believe in Allah, His angels, His books, His prophets, to believe in the last day, and to believe in divine destiny, qadar, both the good and evil thereof. Khayri wa sharri min Allah ta'ala." And then the man again said, "You have spoken rightly." He then said, "Tell me about Ihsan." So he's asking 3 things. These 3 things, like a tripod that holds the camera, tripod, all of them holding the Deen up. That's what Deen is founded on. So it is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And the Prophet replied, "It is to worship Allah as if you see Him. And if you cannot achieve this state of devotion, then you must consider at least that He sees you at all times." Since as human beings we cannot encompass Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Quran says He encompasses all eyes, no eyes can encompass Him. So no one can see His that, the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet advises that then when you're offering the prayer, behave in a manner that at least He sees you at all times, even if you can't see Him, which is not possible. So he described Ihsan in that definition. And then, of course, when we follow this hadith, hadith is that much, but there are other questions that comes later on, but I have taken that part of it. Later on, he, of course, leaves, and the noble Prophet ﷺ says he was Jibril in human form. They say that we never seen that man in Medina before. If he was coming from a long distance, he would have some dust, dirt on him. His clothes were shining. And he was different. And the way he was dictating the Prophet, he had this authority. They can see that too. And now we are going to explain what, Islam or Deen is founded on, one by one. So we say there are 3 dimensions to Deen, to religion. Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, as we said. Iman is the 5th dimension, which includes mainly, of course, the 6 tenets of Islamic faith. That's part of our Aqidah, creed. And what corresponds with this is mu'min. Mu'min is the one who believes. So Iman, mu'min. Mu'min is also one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you know, the term mu'min also means reliable. Reliable person. Iman comes from amana, same root. So Iman and mu'min is the 1st dimension. Islam is the devotional practice dimension of Deen. which is the 5 pillars of Islam mainly, and Muslim, corresponding person is a Muslim. Muslim is the one who is on a devotional path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you have the third component, which is Ihsan. We define Ihsan as spiritual excellence dimension. Ihsan is to worship Allah as though if you see Allah, as the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam. And which title goes with Ihsan? Muhsin. So, Iman, Mu'min, Islam, Muslim, Ihsan, Muhsin. So people who have the attribute of Ihsan, they are called Muhsin. So, as you all already aware of, that Islam has, Aqidah of Islam has 6 tenets, 6 articles of faith. They are existence and unity of Allah, existence of angels, books of revelation, kitabs, messenger of God, messengers of God, all the prophets, resurrection, which is hashir, for an afterlife, and divine determination or predestination, which we call qadar. So in order to become a believer, a true mu'min, one must have belief, faith in all of these essential articles. If any of them is missing, one's Iman is not complete. So if we look at the definitions of belief, disbelief, and hypocrisy, Iman, which is belief, is a light, nur, that Allah creates in the heart of a person when the person takes a step towards Allah and shows inclination towards faith. Because everyone is created in that fitrah. It's part of our natural disposition. We have that inclination already. The seed is in the heart, but it is expected of human beings to use their intellect, use their free will, and show that inclination. And when a human being makes that inclination, Allah places the Iman in their heart, the nur of Iman. So in its most basic definition, Iman is affirmation by the heart and utterance by the tongue. So affirmation by the heart, utterance by the tongue. That is the most, according to Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat, the most basic definition of Iman. So it is ikrar and tasdik. Ikrar with the tongue, tasdik with the heart. Definition of kufr, disbelief, is rejection by the heart and utterance of disbelief by the tongue. So if someone is rejecting in the heart, but they don't utter, we cannot know if they are disbelievers or not. It has to be both, so we can say this person is a disbeliever. And then we have hypocrisy, which is nifaq. And a person who is an hypocrite in Islam is called munafiqs. And this is rejection by the heart, but utterance of belief by the tongue. So they say they believe, but there is no Iman in the heart. These are basic definitions. So whoever supposes that faith is realized through speculative theology, abstract proofs, or academic divisions is an innovator. They are in bidat. Because faith is not really realized by any of these things. Although they help you reach faith, but faith is not really realized by those things, Iman. Because Iman is a nur that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sublime and exalted, casts into the hearts of His servants with bounty and grace from His presence. So Hidayat is really from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we need to make some effort to attain it. Sometimes faith is evident internally and it's impossible to express. Sometimes through a vision while asleep. It can come many ways. Other times by witnessing the state of a pious person and receiving emanation from his light, nur. as a result of his companionship and presence. And then there are times when faith, Iman, comes by the concurrence of circumstances. Something happens, that person suddenly starts believing. It affects that person. So it can come in many ways. Indeed, a Bedouin came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, denying and dissuading him. But when his eyes fell upon his radiant face, may Allah increase its dignity and nobility, he saw the light of prophethood on his face and exclaimed, by Allah, there is no lie on this face. And according to this hadith, this is also mentioned in Riyaz al-Salihin of Imam Ghazali, but the hadith, actually it was Abdullah ibn Salam. He was a Jewish scholar. When the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina, Jews said, this man is claiming to be prophet. You are our most knowledgeable, scholar, to Abdullah ibn Salam. Go speak to him. Their intention was that you will defeat him easily, in a debate. So he went to see the Prophet, the Jewish scholar, without even a single word, any conversation. When he looked at the Prophet's face, he said, Wallahi, there is no lie on this face. This can only belong to a prophet, this face. And he made Iman there, right there and then. So it's very interesting. So roles of proof, why do we need proof? Bediüzzaman Said Nursi died in 1960, argued that with respect to belief and disbelief, the place of knowledge is reversed in modern times. That is why these days we need evidence, we need proof. Because in the past people used to say, we don't need to prove anything, we believe Allah is one, there is Ahirah, there's prophets, all of these things. Why do we need to explain or provide proofs to others? But he says these days, in modern times, the roles have changed. In the past, kufr, disbelief, was based on ignorance. People did not believe because of jahiliyyah, because of ignorance. Most objections could be addressed with simple arguments. But at the present time, disbelief gets its strength from knowledge. It is the opposite, which is science and philosophy. So they use science and philosophy to support disbelief. These days it's changed, as you can see. Much of the scholarly books written in the past, if we look at all the classical scholarly books, assume that the readers already had faith. Isn't that correct? If you look at all the classical scholars' books, they already assume that the person reading the books, their books, they already believe, they already have Iman, because that's the way the language has been put down. Therefore, Muslims today must come up with powerful arguments to overcome barriers to faith, because removing barriers between Allah and a servant is a form of jihad. Jihad is not just going out there and fighting and things like that. That's what people have this idea of jihad. But in reality, jihad is a struggle. It is to strive on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So removing barriers between Allah and servants is a form of jihad. And it's needed these days, isn't it? Through knowledge. Jihad through knowledge. That's what it is. Nursi continues to contend that the Quran gives proofs to key worldview questions in seed-like forms, which can be blossomed into full explanations. So according to Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, he says Quran already gives all of these answers, these proofs, these evidences in a seed-like, kernel-like form. You need to blossom it. You need to open it up. You need to study it. For example, there are some notes here or verses from the Quran. Then look carefully, O man. the works of Allah's mercy, how He gives life to the earth after its death. Verily, the same will give life to man and woman who are dead. For He has power over all things. See the way the Quran uses theological arguments to provide evidence for life after death, resurrection. Have a look how Allah already gives life to everything on earth. Or He creates from nothing, or from a drop of liquid. That's what the Quran says. So if He does this in front of your eyes, He is all-powerful. He will be able to resurrect you again. Do they not consider the Quran with care? Had it been from other than Allah, they would surely have found therein much discrepancy. If the Quran wasn't from Allah, the verse says, you would have found many errors in it. It's been 1400 years. Has anyone ever found any error in the Quran? If you think about it, science is always changing. We are always discovering new things. You know, some theories, they are debunked, they are refuted, repudiated. Some theories need to change, alter, modify. Yeah? And science is constantly changing. It's changeable, it's variable. But the Quran never changes. Quran never changes, and no one can find an error in it. In other words, and you were not able to recite a book before, nor were you able to transcribe it with your right hand. In that case, indeed, would the talkers of vanities have doubted. So the Quran is saying to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you never read any book before because you are ummi. You don't know how to read and write. And you never have written a book or written anything in your life. That is the miracle of the Quran. That is the miracle of the Quran. The Prophet, by the testimony of not just believers but disbelievers who lived those days as well, did not know how to read and write. And there are sufficient evidence to that. We have many evidence, historical evidence. There is not even one historical evidence where the Prophet wrote something or read something. Nothing in the records. All right? But here's the interesting thing. There are many proofs. In the Quran as well, the Quran says he is ummi, but in Hadith as well. One example is during the Hudaybiyah agreement, treaty. As you know, Hazrat Ali was writing the treaty conditions, and on the top of the paper, the agreement, he put, this is an agreement between Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, and Suhail bin Amr. And Suhail bin Amr, who was a mushrik from Mecca at the time, he said, if we believed you were the Prophet, we wouldn't be signing a treaty now. So remove that messenger of Allah from there. And the Prophet said, Ali, rub that out. And Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu said, I can't. Because it's messenger of Allah, it's saying. He said, I can't. And the Prophet said, show me where it is, I'll rub it. That shows that the Prophet didn't know how to write and read. And this was just 4 years before his death. And this is the miracle of the Quran. The Prophet had the sifat, the attribute of fatana. He was extremely intelligent. If he wanted to learn how to read and write, I am quite certain he would have done it in 1 day. 1 day. But this had to be the miracle of the Quran. That is why he wasn't permitted. So when we look at the nature of belief and disbelief, Iman, what is Iman? Iman is a linkage. It connects Allah, the artistic creator, Sani Zul Jalal, to everything in the universe as the works of art, Allah's works of art. So when you have belief, you look at the universe, you see that everything is connected directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great Sani. Disbelief is, which is kufr, is severance. It is cutting ties. It cuts the link between the art, the creatures, the mahluk, and the artistic creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So küfür cuts that link, severs it. Types of disbelief. Sometimes people generalize disbelief as just one thing, one complete thing, but there are types of disbelief. There are types of küfür. Two types mainly. One is called kabul-ü adem, ademi kabul, as Bediüzzaman describes it. One is kabul-ü adem, ademi kabul. One is non-existence of acceptance. It's usually defined as agnosticism. There is non-existence of acceptance. So the person does not accept Iman. Iman is non-existent. Lack of acceptance of proofs of God, that's their argument. Indifference about God, or not being prepared to accept the existence of God yet. This is mainly agnosticism, and it's called non-existence of acceptance. Ademi kabul. That's what it is. Yeah. The other one is acceptance of non-existence, the opposite. Acceptance of non-existence. This is true atheism, because it is a firm conviction based on the belief in the non-existence of God. There are certain figures like that you can think of. One example is, what was that famous Richard Dawkins, for example. They are convinced in their mind that there is no God. It's very interesting. Although even Richard Dawkins, in some of his videos, if you saw, he said, we cannot completely write off the fact that God may exist. Trying to prove the opposite of belief, there are atheists like that. They're actually trying hard to disprove God. This is called true küfür. But the other is different, because they just don't believe. Maybe they don't want to take the responsibility. Maybe they don't care. So there are differences between küfür as well. And then we have the certainty of faith. Blind faith is seen as the lowest form of Iman. Yaqeen is a term which is defined in English as certainty, yaqeen. Thus we have shown Abraham the inner dimensions of the heavens and the earth and the eternal truth. This we had done so that he might be one of those who have achieved certainty in faith. Abraham is Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is verse in the Quran. So yaqeen means the level of your Iman, the certainty of your Iman. And yaqeen could be in three different levels. First level is ilm al-yaqeen. The second level is ayn al-yaqeen. The third is haqq al-yaqeen. So there's three different levels of yaqeen, certainty. The lowest level of Iman is imitative Iman, taqlidi Iman. You believe because your parents believe. You believe because your society believes. You believe because your community believes. So it's taqlid, imitation. But one has to achieve at least, although that is acceptable still as an Iman, one has to at least achieve the level of ilm al-yaqeen, which means certainty by knowledge. The other level is certainty by seeing, which is ayn al-yaqeen, and the third level is certainty by experiencing. And usually we give this example to it. If there is a mountain beyond which you can see smoke coming up, you would use your knowledge and say, where there is smoke, there must be fire. Even though you don't see the fire, because it's beyond the mountain. This is called ilm al-yaqeen, as a comparison, as an analogy here. But if you go up to the top of the mountain, climb it, and actually see fire burning on the other side with your own eyes, it is called certainty by seeing. It's ayn al-yaqeen. And the third level is you walk down the mountain next to the fire and feel the heat on your body. So this is belief, yaqeen by experience. It is called haqq al-yaqeen. Usually when I define these things, to compare, I say the believers of today, they may be described as at the level of ilm al-yaqeen. Inshallah. May Allah accept us at that level, please. Because we believe through knowledge. We haven't seen the Prophet, we haven't seen the Sahabis, we haven't seen the Quran being revealed. We haven't seen any of these things. We haven't seen any miracles from the Prophet. We believe through knowledge. So our level can be defined as ilm al-yaqeen. The second level, I think, ayn al-yaqeen, is the level of the Sahaba, because they've seen things. They've actually seen the Prophet perform miracles. They've seen the Prophet receiving the verses. They've seen many things with their own eyes. We would sort of classify them as ayn al-yaqeen, and haqq al-yaqeen would be the level of the prophets, because they directly received revelation. Yeah, they've seen angels. So they had that experience. Our noble Prophet ﷺ went to Miraj. He had a private audience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you imagine? He was taken out of the known universe, the physical universe. He was one-on-one, if the terminology fits, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is haqq al-yaqeen. Haqq al-yaqeen. So why is perspective so important? Allah does not disdain to strike any parable, something like an ant, a beetle, or something greater or lower than it. Those who have already believed know that it's truth from their Lord. This is the Quran verse. As to those whose unbelief, disbelief, has long been established in their hearts, they say, what does God mean by this example? They'll take it lightly. Thereby he leads many astray, and thereby he guides many. He thereby leads none astray, save the transgressors. So it's very interesting, isn't it? So the Quran is saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use even the smallest examples. Like, have you not seen this insect? I'm just giving. Have you not seen the bee? Have you not seen the tree, the mountain, the stars? He will give all these examples, the Quran, so that the belief, the truth of belief can come into the hearts of people and the minds of people as well. Many times I repeated this, but you know how they say Iman is in the heart? But I say, yes, Iman is in the heart, but the entrance to the heart is the mind, your intellect. That's the doors. Because unless someone with their intellect accepts something, it will not go down to their heart. So perspective is important because the difference is in the way we look and perceive empirical information around us. And we see this in the scientific community as well. They see something, this scientist may interpret it differently, the other scientist may interpret it differently. This is perspective. There are two possible ways humans may perceive the world around them when we look at the world. The first one we call meaning indicative by the name. It's called mana al-ism. Every entity is perceived in itself. There is no reason to look beyond the meaning indicated by that name. People who look around them and analyze nature, the universe, they only perceive it by the meaning indicative by the name. What does that mean? Like, for example, they look at a tree, they say, this is a tree, because its name is tree, but they don't look beyond it. They don't go and study beyond that. This represents the perspective of those who usually justify their disbelief with the natural world by just naming things. Like, for example, when we talk about the creation, beginning of the universe, they come to that point, materialists will say, we don't know how it happened, but it happened. See? We just analyze what we see, what we can test. We don't need to look beyond it. And this is, a perception where their perspective is based on just the names. As I said, tree. But somebody could have, given that tree a different name too, then they would have used that name. Nothing would have changed. However, there is another way of looking at things. It's called looking at objects or what is in existence through mana al-harf. So, meaning indicative by the letter, not by the name. Every entity indicates a meaning other than itself then. Everything changes. Like, for example, I gave the tree example. In the word tree, there is a letter called R, yeah? Inside of it, tree, there's R there. That letter could go into different words and make up a different word, and which has a different meaning. So you're evaluating things by the meaning indicated with the harf, with the letter. I'll explain what that means. When we view each entity in nature as letters, we decipher, it's like a code, a great story written by the Creator in the book of the universe. I always use this analogy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us two books. One is the book of Revelation, the other one is the book of creation. Book of Revelation is the Quran, book of creation is the universe. They are both authored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't have different authors. Sometimes radical people, they say, why are you talking about scientific and technology, all these things? They say, whatever is written there, we're literalists. That's it, we believe in that. That is a wrong way of understanding it. And I say to them, okay, praying 5 times a day is a law of Allah. He commands it, yeah? It's an obligatory act. What about gravity? Is it not a law of Allah? Did someone else make that? That is Allah's law too. Just as you need to obey the commandments in the Quran, you need to obey the laws of, what they call nature, but it's sunnatullah. They are the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, when we read the Quran, it is made up of Arabic. Yeah? The Quran was revealed in Arabic. And it's made up of an alphabet. When the harf, the letters come together in a certain way, they form words. When words come together in a certain way, configured in a certain way, they form sentences, meaningful sentences. And when we read it, we understand something. When we look at the universe, is it any different? Think about it. Universe is made up of letters as well. That's what it means to read the universe through mana al-harf. What are those letters? They are the elements in the periodic table. There are 118 of them, yeah? Hydrogen, helium, 118 of them. They are letters as well. When those letters, harf, come together, configured together in a certain way, they bond together, they form molecules. H2O, 2 letters, 2 of that, 1 letter of that comes together, a meaningful word. It forms water. When molecules come together, they form bigger molecules like proteins and so on. When they come together, they form living beings, plants, human beings, animals. So each of us, each human being, each animal, each creation in nature is really a sentence from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is written in the great book of the universe, Kitab-ı Kainat-ı Kebir. And we are required to read that as well. And this is what is called reading the universe through mana al-harf. So the Quranic perspective is you need to read nature through mana al-harf. The Quran itself calls its verses ayah. This is compelling. Quran itself, yeah, we call them ayah. The Quran calls them ayah as well. But it also calls all the signs in the universe ayah as well. You know, that star is an ayah of Allah. The Quran uses the same thing. Ayah for those two. The repeated use of the word ayah, sign or symbol, if you translate it into English, makes us look for the meaning represented by the sign. It's encouraging us to learn. So what are the sources of knowledge in the Islamic worldview? So we started with the worldview. So what are the main sources? There are three main sources. The first one is Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, as the messenger of God. The second one is the Quran, as the verses, ayah of revelation. And the third one is the universe, as the verses, ayah of creation. So there are three sources, major sources, which allows us to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quran, Prophet Muhammad, and nature, and the universe. Why include the universe? Because it is an objective source of information to test the truth of revelation. That is why it's in there. Human reason is the instrument that achieves that. That is why we are given reason. That's why we have intellect. Without intellect, how could we understand these things? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make it compulsory for a monkey to believe. Yeah? Doesn't have the intellect. He gave it to us, which means we need to use it. We need to reason with the universe. We need to study it. We need to understand, and we need to see the artist behind it. So there's three major sources. So in the main worldview categories, there is a materialistic worldview. There is egocentric worldview. There are people who are materialistic. Only matter matters to them. There are egocentric worldview. It's all me, me, me. It's all about me. I don't care about anybody else. And the third one is God-centric worldview. Everything is based on belief and the commandments and to submission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called the God-centric worldview. Belief and disbelief produce marked differences in the way one sees the world and the universe. You know, people can look at the world and the universe in different ways, and it will produce different results, whether you're looking at with the glasses of belief or with the glasses of disbelief. You know, if I put a red glasses on, I will see everything red, and I will think everything is red. Disbelief will result in a spirituality and psychologically dark and grim view of the world, while belief, Iman, will give a more luminous, bright, and positive outlook. Disbelief will be very gloomy. Why? Because according to disbelievers, life will end and they will never exist again. You got one chance to hit the target. Even if you did, it'll be temporal. You will never exist again. That's very dark. As I mentioned a few times before, for disbelievers, when they look at the past, it's a huge cemetery, swallowed millions and billions of people, never to return again. Dark and gloomy. When they look at future, it's a huge cemetery again, waiting to swallow all of us. It is dark and gloomy. But Iman is different. Again, the Quran says, God is the protector of those who have Iman, faith. From the depths of darkness, He will lead them forth into the light. Of those who reject faith, the patrons are the evil ones. From light, nur, He will lead them forth into the depth of darkness. They will be companions of the fire, to dwell therein forever. May Allah protect us. This is true for all aspects of life, because again in the Quran, Iblis said, now that you have allowed me to rebel and go astray, I will surely lie in and wait for them on your straight path. Shaitan is saying this, Iblis. Then I will come up on them, before them, behind them, from their right and from their left. And you will not find most of them, human beings he's talking about, thankful to you. He's saying it to Allah. But look at the philosophy that Iblis is using. Right from the beginning, he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have allowed me to rebel. In a way, he is saying, you entrapped me. It's very interesting, isn't it? You allowed me to rebel. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the angels, Iblis was there as well, Azazil. You know, when he said, prostrate before Adam, they all did, illa Iblis, except Iblis. Why? Because Iblis was arrogant. And then you know what he claimed? He said, you knew that I wasn't going to make sajda. Because you're all-knowing. And you still put me through that test. See that the first philosopher in history is Iblis. First philosopher. But he is using his own logic. But if Allah said to him, did I give you free will? Yes. Could you have prostrated before Adam if you wanted to? Yes. Then how is it, hasha, Allah's fault? It was your decision. My knowing what you were going to do does not change anything. You were going to do it anyway. It was your decision. And we have free will too. It's an important thing to remember. So, in conclusion, Islam has three dimensions, as we said: theology, devotional practices, and spirituality. What were they? Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. And people who follow all of these three are called mu'min, Muslim, and muhsin. May Allah allow us to follow all those three. So all of these definitions can fit all of us, inshallah. I'll stop there.